we're in time, as long as we're finite creatures, we're never going to achieve perfection in finality,
We can't.
right?
Right.
Even if we can imagine a total utopia on Earth, that still wouldn't be final perfection. I think that
Well,
requires
well,
growth.
I guess it depends on which. If it was a traditional utopia, then
Right.
in the traditional worldview, as far as I understand, utopia is a static place where nothing changes. So I think that it would be possible to achieve utopia within a static worldview, but within an evolutionary worldview, where we're part of an infinite process of becoming, we can never reach perfection in the present moment. It's something we're always reaching for that ultimately never attain.
Right. Now, I mean, whether we transcend the finite completely and enter into communion with the infinite at some higher level, that's a theology kind of beyond where this book is. But the idea of perfecting the universe, carefully described, and I do my best to sort of distinguish this idea from other ideas that may be, sort of less evolutionary. What this leads to is the final chapter of the book, which I describe as the mission of evolutionary spirituality. And of course, this, the mission of our lives, the mission of the finite universe is to experience becoming perfect in time. But in terms of being pragmatic and getting back to the original theme of spiritual leadership for the developed world, I think one of the exciting promises of evolutionary spirituality is that we can come to understand more, efficaciously how we can raise consciousness. And when we look in history and see how is it that consciousness has emerged, what's caused consciousness to evolve and develop throughout the history of humanity, we can begin to see that it's really the new octave of beauty, truth, and goodness. It's the new ideals of morality, right? The
Mm.
new truths, the new reality frame of an emerging new worldview, the new art, the new music that, in a sense, attracts those who are ready to emerge beyond their worldview into a new one, right? So we see it during the Enlightenment, right? The new science of Galileo and Descartes and Newton described the world in an entirely attractive new way that actually pulled people's consciousness from traditionalism into modernism, right? You listen to the music of Mozart or Beethoven. That music is inspired by the emergence of modernism, and it did indeed raise consciousness, right? I mean, you play Mozart, your consciousness is raised. I mean, that's what's been scientifically proven, right? So, likewise, in the emergence of postmodernism, when Dylan sang "The Times They Are a Changin'," I mean, he sat behind a million eyes and told them what they saw. It was like it raised consciousness. It was when Thomas Paine wrote "Common Sense" during the Revolution, American Revolution. It raised consciousness, a new kind of truth, a powerful truth for the age. So we begin to understand through this kind of spiritual frame that these forms of perfection, this light of spirit actually has a gravity on consciousness, that it can evolve consciousness when properly applied to the needs of the consciousness that you're trying to serve. This can kind of act as a new form of social medicine, right? Just like the Enlightenment brought about scientific medicine, which improved the human condition immensely. I think in this second Enlightenment, in the emergence of the evolutionary worldview, the beautiful, the true, and the good will be seen as a new kind of medicine that can heal the wounds of history by raising consciousness in all the places that it's stuck, and by helping us achieve a new level of solidarity and spiritual brotherhood and sisterhood.
Well, how that's a very inspiring vision, Steve.
Well, I mean, whether I can pull it off or not, I mean, I guess we'll have to see. But I think that obviously this is bigger than all of us, and this evolutionary perspective does bring new truth and new beauty and new goodness, and specifically about what these values are in themselves. Right? I mean, Alfred North Whitehead, right, one of the founders of integral philosophy, and indeed one of the early adopters of this evolutionary perspective, defined evolution as an increase in the ability to experience what is intrinsically valuable. In other words, it's a kind of a consciousness-centric definition of evolution, which
Sure.
says that evolution is all about our deepening discovery of intrinsic value, which is about our deepening discovery of spirit, which is about perfection entering into this realm of time.
Before we finish, for our last question, could you go into a little more detail about how in your thesis how the emerging insight into the nature and significance of beauty, truth, and goodness can help humanity, can help human beings uh, see and understand how we can affect the world, the material world, the world that that we live in together for the better. Because I think one of the things that's very interesting about the book you're writing, and I think the goal of the book is that is a very tangible relationship between spiritual insight as being a catalyst uh, for not only inspiring us but helping us to see very directly how we can improve the world. So could you be very specific in making that connection between how these extraordinary insights will be a source of inspiration, will help human beings to see how they can uh, affect the world for the better.
Sure. And thanks for asking me that excellent question.
Sure.
Um, it's worth for
Excuse
people.
me, I'm sorry to interrupt you. The
Yeah,
reason I'm asking you this question,
right.
sorry for that,
That's fine.
is because most of the time, or too often, uh, spiritual experience and spiritual insight often occurs within its own context. It seems to occur in a subjective context that exists somehow not directly related to the world itself.
Right.
Right? It's a separate metaphysical context for the individual, and how how that experience is directly supposed to affect the world, tends to be rather ambiguous. That's why I'm very inspired by and compelled by your thesis, because you're making a very specific connection between this very profound spiritual insight and affecting the world directly.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of the things that evolution, that the spiritual teachings of evolution, as we're coming to understand them, one of the things that really makes clear is that all evolution, right, from the Big Bang onward, are forms of spiritual growth. And if we come to understand that the evolution of consciousness is this amazing new insight, even though it's been achieved prior to the emergence of evolutionary spirituality. Evolutionary spirituality opens up an entire new domain of understanding of what it means to say that consciousness evolves and what the implications of that are. And so if we then look at the world and this world of trouble and suffering and global warming and all the challenges that we face in the 21st century, and we come to see that practically every problem we can identify, any problem, can be understood at least partially as a problem of consciousness. If we could raise or change the consciousness as either creating these problems or failing to prevent them, then we'd have a new method for making the world a better place in an extremely powerful and direct way.
Indeed. Yeah.
So one of the things that evolutionary spirituality does is it connects the personal experience of spirit that you can have while meditating or in nature or any other context for spiritual experience with the evolution of consciousness that can not only improve our own spiritual position in the world, but can make us a lot more powerful in making the world a better place, because once we understand the evolution of consciousness better for ourselves, then that empowers us with the ability to raise consciousness non-coercively and more effectively in all the places where the raising of consciousness would solve a major problem. So from a pragmatic standpoint, one of the things that more effective forms of spiritual leadership can do is create a kind of social solidarity in the United States that it could overcome much of the polarity that currently prevents the formation of political will. So if you have a problem like climate change and you have a stagnant electorate that is polarized in a way that can't really effectively address this problem, then the problem is not whether we should put a gasoline tax or some kind of a carbon sequestering. I mean, all those techno-economic solutions are worth talking about, but none of them are going to get off the ground unless there's a political will that's going to give the politicians and the business people permission to try to start addressing those problems. So the evolution of consciousness gets extremely practical and even political really fast when we understand that every problem is a problem of consciousness. And this makes the idea of discovering a new method of evolving consciousness, a new way of gently persuading people to improve their definition of what's in their self-interest, or what the good life is, or what their duties are, or what really is going to make them happy. If we can raise consciousness along those lines, then we're going to see spectacularly tangible results in the physical world.
Well, that is a very exciting, very intriguing possibility. I know we're all in our own ways working as hard as we can for that to happen. It feels inwardly very close, outwardly feels very far away. But I know that we're all deeply working very hard for that. So thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure and a delight to speak to you today. And I want to follow this project very closely, and I look forward to having another conversation with you when you're nearing the completion of your book, because I'm sure you're going to be presenting these ideas in a very different way at that time.
Well, obviously, your ability to describe the book at the beginning of starting to write it and your ability to describe it once you've got it in the bag are a big difference. So I hope to improve and make more clear some of the exciting insights that are not just mine, but that are really part of the emerging evolutionary perspective altogether. And it's worth saying here at the end, Andrew, that I really am standing on your shoulders, that your contributions to evolutionary spirituality are, in a sense, prerequisite as a jumping off place for where I'm going. I mean, there are very few of us who are being able to authentically understand and express and teach this new evolutionary form of understanding. And you're one of the few. And so it's a great privilege to be your colleague and to work together with you side by side in this important project.
Thank you very much, Steve. So
Thank you, Andrew.
much love to you, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Looking forward to it also.